Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey and a few other items, including Tom's culinary skills. But we're going to start today not with Tom in the kitchen, but let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the hockey world. The word is that Patrice Bergeron has re-upped. Not a surprise with the Boston Bruins. He had made it clear to them that he was either going to retire or he was going to re-sign with them. And then the new coach, Jim Montgomery, sort of spilled the beans 2 or 3 weeks ago when he said he had been talking regularly with Bergeron. If he was thinking about retirement, I don't think he'd be talking.
Oh, is that right? I didn't hear that part. Oh, wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so not news, but amazingly enough, I mean, they're getting essentially Bergeron for a $2.5 million base salary and $2.5 million in bonuses. That has to be the best deal, certainly among stars. I mean, it's a bargain. He's still playing at an extremely high level.
I'd like to see how those conversations went too with the general manager and him or his agent, because in one way, it's a little bit of an insult, right? I haven't seen the bonus package yet. What was he making before? Like $7 or $8 million a year? Was he in that range?
No, he was in the 6 range. He's always taken less so that the Bruins can fit everybody in. Yeah. So
I would assume that it's kind of like they've got a handshake agreement that he's going to be in the organization in some capacity, what he's done too, right? I mean, he's been there all the time. Again, I don't know him. He seems like a very proud man, played through a ton of nasty injuries in the playoffs in particular. The way he plays, the character. And again, I mean this is a total compliment. He isn't the most skilled guy. I mean, he isn't the fastest player. He doesn't have the best shot or whatever. He gets a lot out of his game. Like, he's going to look back at his career, and he's going to, that's one of those guys who's going to look back and say, wow, I got the most out of my career. He really did. And again, listen, I understand the logic that he takes less so that the team, I can't remember. I know in the past, with the entry-level bonuses, those are the only other players that are allowed to get bonuses, either entry-level players or players over 35, which Bergeron in. They had to include those potential bonuses in the cap number. I believe that was the case, because that still would go against the cap. So I don't know how that works with the 35-year-old, whether those 2.5 are potential $1 million bonuses.
I could be wrong too, but I felt that you could sign him that way, but then you'll end up with the potential for a cap penalty next year because you'll have to, deal with the bonuses. So, but
that says a lot about him, right? Wants to come back for one more year, but again, he's a proud man. I mean, I like you said, he's always taken less, and I'm sure that was part of the conversation. But to go to Patrice Bergeron and say, okay, we'll take you back, but only I guess it's still potential.
I doubt the conversation was like that. Yeah, we'll take you back, but I think they were on their knees begging him to come back.
Yeah. But then what do they say to him? But he didn't voluntarily sign for $2.5 million, though, right?
I think they knew. I mean, Bergeron's a smart guy. He can go to cap friendly just like we can and look and see where they're at. I mean, there was no money. There's no room in the end, So, and speaking of that, we'll launch right into. I wanted to make another point about that, though. Of course, I've had a senior moment. Now I've forgotten what that point was.
Before I forget, how's the family with the COVID and everything?
COVID's good. My daughter yesterday finally tested negative. So she had COVID, a good solid week. She had, it was just like my wife, tough symptoms for a couple of days, and then it began to subside. It's, a lot of people have gone through it. I mean, it can be a little rugged. And although some people are asymptomatic, one of my granddaughters, my oldest granddaughter, who's 9 years old, she tested positive and never had any symptoms.
Wow.
It's really a lottery.
How about your grandson with the ostriches? Any update?
Oh, flamingos. Yeah.
Flamingos, sorry.
No, he learned to ride a bike while he was in quarantine. So that was good. He's 4, and so he's very excited about that. And as he told me when he stopped by my house on his way home to see his mother after a week, he said, Pipa, that's what he calls me, Pipa. People, I feel really comfortable on that bike.
He said it that way, really?
He did.
Oh,
He
classic.
used the word comfortable.
Oh, that's excellent. A 4-year-old talking like that. That's good.
Yeah. He felt really comfortable. He said,
I'd be dying, but you know him, so I'm assuming that's his
no,
personality.
it is. He's, he's a parrot. He listens, and that's kind of an Allen trait. When I was growing up, I remember, I was always the fly on the wall. I was, I would just stay just inconspicuous enough to be able to get all the information, but not be having me, thrown out of the, the living room for eavesdropping. So, and all my kids were like that. And now I start to see my grandkids are all, are all ears. Don't say much to draw attention to themselves. But
that's the reason why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah, that's the old Gordie Howe.
Is that Gordie Howe's line?
Well, Gordie Howe, used to say that his dad told him that. But so what was the thing I was gonna say about?
Here's our sleep expert here. What you're thinking? Day 7. Is that Brian? No, it's Brendan Duffy. I think is our sleep expert. Day 7 is still positive for COVID. Feel good. Oh.
Yeah, no, it lingers a long time. My former boss went 10 days, and the problem you have with that is the doctor told my wife, and we did trust it, that she was probably, how did she phrase it? You're not likely contagious anymore. But it's still, when you have that, you're testing daily, and when you got that positive, you're just feeling, do I really want to give this to somebody? So like you don't, even though the doctor told us she wasn't contagious, and we trusted that because, the rest of us were all on the are we or are we not positive trail. So we needed someplace to park 2 of the grandkids, and my wife was the most logical place. She was up by herself at our lake house. She had been, she was in the 6th day when this started. So she, she took the kids, and of course she was involved in my grandson being able to ride a bike and, all that kind of stuff. So they had a wonderful time.
Susan Brooks on it again. Roving reporter.
Well, I don't want to say this, but that is a cliche. I mean, it's like, this has been, I heard that in the early 60s.
Oh, so. See, I heard it recently. Well, probably within the last 10, 15 years, I heard it.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, a lot. It was when I was growing up, it was what adults said to you. It's like, especially men like to say that. So
I never heard that. Wow.
Yeah. So, but the Bruins team, I think you have to call them successful this season because, Bergeron stayed, and they seem, I'm going to put quotes around that, seem optimistic about getting Pasternak done. They're going to have to pay him, that Huberdeau deal didn't help him.
Yeah. That was a surprise. Didn't you think it was surprising that Huberdeau was signed so quickly? I think that's a big plus, and I think that's a bonus for the Flames. I mean, really, they've made a nice recovery. Right, because Huberdeau got 125 points, didn't he? Whereas I know Kachuk's a different player, but didn't he get like 115 points?
Yeah, but I don't compare. I'm comparing them or Huberdeau and Gaudreau. I look at it as one big package. Okay. Yep. They lost Tkachuk and they lost Gaudreau.
Yep.
And in return, they've gotten Huberdeau, and now he signed long term. Yeah. So now they've really replaced Gaudreau because they're very similar players. Like we can debate who's better. Yep. But they're very similar. And there's actually a lot of people think Huberdeau is much older, but he's a year difference than Gaudreau. 29 versus 28.
And I like him better than it's not that I want to be careful with this one. It's not that I don't like Gaudreau.
Don't put him on the list. Don't put him on that list.
Well, he's honorable mention. I mean, he'd get called up on the list if he see how he plays in Columbus.
Yeah. You're talking Gaudreau now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, not Huberdeau.
No.
I still maintain whether you think one's better than the other or not, they're similar players. Like they're quality offensive players. So I think that, that's kind of a wash for Calgary, 1-for-1.
Yep.
And now they still have lost Tkachuk, which is a terrible loss. Like
Yep.
he helps in so many different ways. But they've picked up Mackenzie Weegar, who, they had a hole on defense, and he kind of fills it. He's kind of the guy they were looking for. He's a shutdown defenseman. I think the Panthers were a little bit disappointed in him this season. But still, I think he's a guy that's going to be able to play against, top players in the league. So that's a good fit. Now, the negative, of course, is he'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. So you might only have him for 1 year. Or, if things don't go well, they could trade him at the deadline. And I see, unlike Huberdeau, where I said, if you can't sign him now, you got to trade him now because you got to get a lot. I don't feel that way with Weegar. Right. If he goes in the season and he gets hurt, well, you took a gamble. Yeah. So they get him. They got a player who I'm told is a B prospect, probably will play in the league. He's a pretty good, solid, dependable player and as a prospect. And then, of course, they got a first-round pick. So it's not like they didn't get anything for.
I actually think that's pretty good. I know Tkachuk is that special player.
Yeah.
So you lose him, that hurts. But again, they were in a bad spot.
They were in a bad spot, but you wouldn't make that deal. Like I would not trade Tkachuk for we'll play in the league, won't be a star prospect, a first-round pick, and 1 year of Mackenzie Weegar. I wouldn't have made that trade, but I'm just like you. They made the best of a really bad hand.
Yeah, they did.
Tree Living looked like a schmuck,
and
he no longer looks like a schmuck.
Definitely. And I know you still have to be able to use it, and they did gain some more cap space too, right?
Yeah.
Based on what if they would have had to sign Tkachuk.
Sure. No, that's a very valid point, Tom, because they do have extra cap space that they wouldn't have had, and that is an asset as we know. So. Right. I think they've done pretty well. And already they're talking I know somebody commented that I kind of giggled but I agree with them. The guy said, this is the shiny new toy, concept. When you get a new guy and he's a veteran guy, all of a sudden people start talking about he should be the captain. And that may be true. Yeah. But it's not a bad way to go. Huberdeau is a proven performer, quality human being. So we'll see how that goes. So
I like his comments too. Like his comments were part of it was the Flames made him feel like he was important there. They really wanted him there.
Yeah. And gosh, I like that. If you're Calgary, or Columbus or Winnipeg, and suddenly
two guys have just said that they don't want to play in your city for your team anymore. Now one guy says, "Yes, I do want to play there."
Yeah. Happy to be there. Well, in most things in life. What you really want is someone who has enthusiasm for the project. That's what you want. You can name pretty much anything you're doing, and you say, boy, that guy's enthusiastic about this. You like that. You like people who are enthusiastic for the project, whatever it is you're doing.
Definitely.
So
all in.
Yeah.
Passes come from the heart. Herbie Brooks, passes come from the heart.
Yeah. So.
Hey, Susan Brooks, is she just a scoop here? I didn't hear this. Any thoughts on Jimmy Vesey returning to the Rangers?
Yeah, well, I think her brother had that scoop. Larry mentioned it. I think he did. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but I think he did. I think I read it in the Post that
he was supposed to be a big time player, right? And but I still think he can skate. He's a good, serviceable guy.
He can play for sure. That's well put. I think. He had not become the player that people thought he was going to be, but still he's a player. And half the time,
we all remember Dan Cleary, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or Niedermeyer.
Yeah.
Like Rob Niedermeyer, number 3 pick in Florida, going to be a top scorer.
Yeah.
Finally got traded. They were down on him because he didn't score. And then all of a sudden they realized, boy, he's a really valuable role player. He can skate. He can match up with anybody in the league because he gets skating ability. Boy, he's really valuable.
Yeah, totally. Is that true? Dan Cleary the same way. Everybody had his high expectations. He was going to score a lot of goals, bounced around from team to team, finally got Detroit, and he was that serviceable role player. Yeah.
And boy, he was really valuable. Yeah. Mike Babcock loved him.
It's true.
I could just hear Mike saying he can do a lot of different things. Yeah, he
I
can
like
do a
when
lot of different
we should go and have a show on cliches in the National
Yeah,
Hockey.
yeah. Well, but and that's true. Sometimes when and it is, and that's another cliche. Like, he needs a fresh start.
Yes.
We always say that he needs a fresh start, but there is a lot of validity to that because oftentimes the fresh start includes removal, from the negativity that you have there. Like, and in a lot of cases, it's what the expectations that you didn't live up to.
Yep.
And then you get to a new place. Well, you're coming when you haven't done anything to make the other team happy. And then all of a sudden, whatever you do seems like, boy, that's really good.
Especially when a team has invested a draft pick on the player, right? So they say all these things at the draft. There's these expectations.
Right.
To do. It's almost most players don't usually live up to the full expectations. I mean, there's some players that outdo them. So it's what I noticed too. It seems like it's always the player's always worse when he's in his own city. Everybody gets to watch him all the time. They get to see all the flaws in his game, right? The people that don't get to see him all the time don't see all the flaws in his game. And every player has flaws in his game. There's no perfect player. There has been a perfect player. But it is interesting, right? And then he gets someplace else, just like you said. Now it's okay. He's a good player. He's not this. We're not expecting him to be like a first round draft pick. So.
Yeah, but wouldn't you oftentimes, Jesus, the second time I've lost my thought.
You get CTE.
I heard my phone and I'm thinking, who's trying to call me at 10:30? Because anybody that I know well knows on Monday and Wednesday that I'm not available between 10 and 11. So, and I thought, I wonder who was trying to call me. So,
no, $750,000. Huh? Okay.
Yeah,
that must be the minimum right now too. I think, isn't it? Is that the minimum?
Yeah, no, that's I mean, I think a player like Phil Kessel is going to have to sign for $1 million or less. I've even heard PTO, the dreaded PTO for Phil.
I was driving around listening to the NHL Network radio, and who's the general manager of Phoenix now? It's awful.
Armstrong.
He was getting interviewed. He says, I know it's a standard thing to say nice things about a player that's leaving your organization, but he had fantastic things to say about Kessel, how much he was still a great skater, how the players all loved him. He was a unique guy, but they loved having him around. So it was again, pretty classy thing for him to not say negative things, but he didn't have to say anything at all. He was going out of his way to say some really nice things. So.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on Phil Kessel, and for a very long time, I've just even written recently. He had 52 points last year for a horrendous team.
Yeah, yep.
52
played every game too, right?
Yeah, played every game.
Yeah. Always plays every game, every time he goes someplace. Yeah.
He looks like an insurance salesman, not a hockey player. So people make fun of him, but he's always been productive. Right. Over 400 goals scored, won cups. Right. Whether he's on a bad team or a good team, puts up numbers. Yeah. Guys love him. He's a very shy guy.
He just gives himself a little bit of trouble only because he gives that kind of I don't really care attitude. Obviously, he does care by the way he plays, but when you're speaking to him, he does give you that perception.
Well, I think it reflects his shyness. I think he's not comfortable. He's one of those. I don't know that he's comfortable in his own skin. I don't know that he's comfortable being Phil Kessel. But he is Phil Kessel.
But or else he's really comfortable being Phil Kessel, and he just doesn't care what anybody else thinks, right?
I don't think that's the truth.
You don't think so?
Just having met him. And getting to know him, I see him as shy.
Oh,
so
that's a good point, though. Can't you still be shy but still believe in yourself and still love yourself? Or because you're shy?
I think you're. I don't see him as I think if he could not, have to talk about himself ever, he'd be really happy.
Oh.
Kind
of like me, right? Kind of like me.
I would say he's the anti-Tom Laidlaw. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself. He doesn't. We've talked about this before. I call it dancing in the middle. When you're at the wedding, there are people who love to go and get in the middle and dance with a circle around them, and there are people who wouldn't do it for $100 million. And you would do it without hesitation. And Phil Kessel. Not a chance.
I'd probably take the shirt off too, right?
So you might. So, and it just kind of speaks to their personalities. I mean, I just think he's a guy, he likes to sit up in his nice place and play video games and, order Uber or Eats and, he's not a guy that wants to go out and,
How did the whole hot dog thing comes out? There's pictures of him, like they had a picture of him with
Yeah.
a cup and the hot dogs. Is that just somebody started making fun of him? That he was not cheap?
Yeah, well, yeah, because, he's always looked like he's a little overweight. Like he's not the modern athlete that watches everything he puts in his body. At least that's the way he looks. I don't really even have any clue what
he's got that face. And I think the same as you. I love the kid. He's fantastic. Yeah. He's got the face like he's just out of shape. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to, he's certainly in my mind, like he's a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer without a question. Like he's one of the greatest.
What if you go to camp with Pittsburgh? There's my guess. They got any room for him?
Well, I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, Malkin would certainly welcome him.
Yeah.
The guys love him. Sidney Crosby loved him. Crosby told me that he's one of the funniest players he's ever played with. But it's kind of like that one where he goes, it's not one of those guys go, hey, listen, guys, listen what I have to say. He just sitting in his locker and all of a sudden he'll just say something and everybody's just rolling on the carpet.
I love that. And do you think he always knows that it's funny, or I think he's just got that personality?
Oh, I mean, he's smart. So yeah, I mean, I think he does know, but it's not like I bet he thinks about it before he says it because he knows then that everybody's going to be looking at him, So I'm not exaggerating. He's a shy guy. Wow. Like he doesn't really, I think he's fine with his players. I mean, with his teammates, but because I know Crosby told me, he said, we just love the guy. We absolutely loved him. That he just was fun to be around and,
Well, he didn't live on fast food. He didn't mind eating fast food. He had no problem eating that.
Yeah.
Cheeseburgers before a game too. So,
yeah. I mean, I told the story, Mike, last thing. I just did Bernie Nichols's book with him, and Bernie and Wayne for about a 2-year period were inseparable. And Bernie tells the story of Wayne wanting to go out to lunch with him the first time, and he's thinking, "Wow, I wonder where we're going to go in this nice place." And he said they walked out of the building, and Wayne just walked right across the parking lot. And Bernie says, "Where the hell are we going? Are we getting a cab or what's going on?" And Wayne just walked right into McDonald's. Yeah. And they sat down, and quarter pound with cheese, Big Mac. They were on their way, and that became their thing. After practice, Bernie and Wayne would do McDonald's.
I didn't know they did it all the time. I remember we were up in Winnipeg. I think I told the story too. And we were after practice running to the airport or something. Guys were hungry, and we went over to McDonald's. And Wayne led the way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's that's common. And today, I've told this before, but we don't always have the same viewers at the same time. But 2 years ago, a prominent NHL player off the record told me, if you want to eat a hamburger now in this league, you got to do it by yourself. Because if you're with your team and you order a Whopper with cheese or something like that, he said they're going to get on you. Yeah, he said they really will.
They had it must have been 6 or 7 years ago, or wherever it was, or longer. The Rangers were going to be playing in the outdoor game, so they had them follow them around. They do that show where they follow them around all over the place. And the night before a game, they were on the road, and the whole team went for dinner. And was it Prust? I think it might have been Prust that was on the team, tough guy. He had ordered a beer the night before a game, one beer. And everybody, it was like nobody wanted to go near him because he even started laughing about himself. He says, I've got a beer. It's a pretty funny video, part of it, where they give him a hard time. Yeah. Which the old days, that was bonding time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, guys are very, very smart in terms of nutrition. A lot of them have nutritionists before they even get in the league. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion about, I don't think it's an everyday thing for players, but over time, like they're paying attention to what they're putting in. There's, you see all the time now. It's funny. If you can see the scale, you always see players as they're walking by the shower or wherever, they step on that scale. They always want to know what their weight is.
Wow.
They're always careful.
I remember Herbie used to have, I think it was like every Monday or something like that, there was weigh-in and body fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was paranoid about that with Herbie. I think it came from like my first year where I showed up, the first year with Herbie, my second year in the league, I showed up out of shape. I had wrongly got the impression that I was a veteran player. The veteran players back then showed up in not too good a shape, especially if it was Herb's first year. It's like I gave Herb the opportunity just to, here's the way it's going to be and not be. And he used me as an example, and rightfully so. That was when we'd flown over to Finland for training camp. We'd already done our testing over here. We flew over to Finland for training camp. I get on the ice right away. The whole team skates about an hour, and he keeps me on the ice about an hour, half hour after it skates my rear end. And then he brought me into the cabin where he was staying and just ripped me. Oh, God, it's funny. So maybe I was paranoid from that. I'm not sure.
I loved Igor Larionov. Was one of my all-time favorite players. He and I would have these long talks, and we would disagree on some things. Like, he did not like the NHL's Stanley Cup overtime. I've talked about this before. I don't want to get into it too much, but he just didn't think that it's a good way to settle an important hockey game. He said because fatigue really settles it. And he didn't like that. And there's too much luck involved. He thought it should be a skill. He wanted to be like a shootout, and if it's good enough for soccer, which is the world's biggest sport, and, more people play that and more people are interested in it than the tiny little sport of hockey, then it would be good enough for hockey. So he thought it should be settled by a shootout.
Interesting.
But yeah. And he always believed in drinking one glass of wine per day. He was one of those, there's a lot of people in Europe that believe that.
Yep.
It's medicinal for medicinal.
A lot of doctors say that that's actually
good. Yeah, it's good for you. Sure. Yeah. And late in his career, we hadn't talked for a while, and I saw him in the locker room, and he said, "Hey, Kevin," and I went over to chat with him, and then before we left, I shook his hand. I said, "You still drinking your one glass away?" He goes, "Oh no." He said, "I've changed." He says, "Now I'm drinking two." He said,
"That's good."
But anyway, I started to tell the story about Thomas Holmstrom, and he told this story at his retirement. In the 2002 Stanley Cup final, there was a triple overtime game. The Red Wings ended up winning that cup, and actually Igor Larionov, of all people, scored the game-winning goal. And they were still rooming with people at the time, and Holmstrom was with Igor Larionov, and he said, I was just starving. And he said, I get back to the room, and he said, I call up room service, and I order a steak and a potato. And he says, I'm just so ravished. But he said, we need to get to bed and everything else, but I really wanted to eat. And Igor says, Thomas, let me have the phone. And he goes, we don't want any of that. We want a fruit plate, he says. Send up. And he says, do you have a couple of apples and some orange? And he goes, yeah, that's all we need. We just need a fruit plate. Oh. Thomas said, I'm just thinking about how my steak is no longer with me. And
that's funny.
So anyway, he made Thomas Holmstrom, after a triple overtime game, eat an apple and a little bit of fruit before he went to bed. So
did you ever work any of those games, those really long overtime games like the one Philly and Pittsburgh had a few years ago?
Yeah, I've done some lengthy overtime games, for sure. I mean, I wasn't there when Mud Bruneto, scored in the sixth overtime, but
Mud Bruneto. Wow, look at that one. Mud Bruneto. I've never heard that name before.
Mud Bruneto? Yeah, he scored the winning goal in the longest game in NHL history.
What was the Pittsburgh Philly one where Primo scored? That was pretty long too, wasn't it?
That was long as well. And then, we've had some, other lines. The one, of course, Pat LaFontaine in Washington. I was at that one.
Oh, you were? Okay. Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been, I've been at some long games too. Yeah. In the old days, before we had the web, like your deadlines would just be shot, and you would see as, guys were trying to be ready just in case. And then all of a sudden it would go beyond their deadline and they would just close their computer and then they're just watching, because then it was just too late to get anything in. Now there's no such thing as, when it's done, you'll post it and it goes on the web. But, when it was back in the newspaper world.
That's right, too. So it doesn't matter anymore. Like, there is no deadlines anymore. You Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
No. But the guys that actually had a lot of deadlines, they were prepared for this, because a lot of people, you would write your story before the game was over, and that was hard for people to sort of realize. But, with 6 minutes to go, I'd be starting to fashion my story and have it written in a way. And then if it changed, you would try to have to, you'd write it in such a way that you could, do some quick fixes, because you couldn't rewrite the whole thing. But every once in a while, something outrageous would happen, 3 goals in the final 3 minutes, and then you would just be a mess, and you'd be just, pounding away. So
There was a lot of times in games. Did you have like a predisposed notion or like a theme of what the game was going to be like, or you're just sitting there watching it, letting it develop?
Yeah, I'm letting it develop, and I'm looking for an angle as we go. And oftentimes, you're kind of in a position where the blowout is better for you, because then the theme is settled early, and you can start writing, and it's a much better story. When you're scrambling, when it's 0-0, I mean, it's a better game and it's better to write, but you don't know which way it's going to go, so it's hard to write a coherent story. That's why. We used to have a running saying, like, no journalist ever read his first edition story, because if we don't see it, it doesn't exist. But, you were kind of embarrassed because, it seemed a little incoherent, because, you had to write it before it was over, and you had to sort of guess how it was going to go. And, so, you'd sort of arrange your paragraphs in such a way. And, sometimes I'm sure those, didn't sound as crisp, and the transitions weren't as good as when, you have time. Once the game is over and you got 40 minutes, I mean, now, that's all the journalist needs is 40 minutes.
When you write your post on Facebook, but largely about your family a lot of times, which is fantastic, they're usually pretty long posts. Does that just come easy to you now because you've written so much?
Yeah. Yeah, but I've been like that a long time. When I was in college, like, everybody was afraid of the term paper because it was 20 pages. Back then it was the typewriter. I mean, I'm old. So, but I would just put the first page in, and I would start a term paper like I was writing a 10-inch story, page 1, and I'd start typing away, and, just keep rolling. And then, it didn't take.
It wasn't something you learned. That was a skill or just something in you already.
Yeah, but the more I did, the better I got at it. But it really helped me in college. Most journalists I know can bluff their way through anything by their writing ability. Like, I always say, my greatest accomplishment in college was I got a C on a test about a book that I had never read. And basically what I did is I went to the study group the day before. So, and that was 40 minutes. So I listened to all that, and then I just wrote well, so it was an essay test, and, I just kind of bluffed my way through it. And, most people would have been disappointed. I was thrilled with a C, because
I'm the opposite, right? I'm the same way with talking. So I know I've told you the story. So back when I went to college as well, there was no computers. Like now, people are sending out jokes and there's tweeting and all that kind of stuff. But back in college, people would print out the flyers of funny stuff, like a funny story. So one guy, where it came from, wrote a flyer on the different personality in the men's urinal. So I was taking a speech class, and it was at night. Same as you, I had not prepared. So I grabbed this thing. There's like 12 different personalities in the this thing. So I took it, and I'm up in front of the class. Now, again, they're all laughing. First of all, they're laughing. I'm the captain of the hockey team. And first of all, I think they're laughing because I've got the nerve to come in and talk about the different personalities in the urinal. And so then they start laughing. Well, and I get on a roll. I'm feeling really confident. So I'm expanding on all these personalities in there. So I ended up getting a C as well. I got an A for presentation and an F for preparation. But I ended up with a C, like you said, and I was very happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great comedy routine, to be honest with you.
It was
yeah. I mean, that just seems funny because we've all seen, guys coming into the, bathroom, and, by then most of them have been drinking. That's why they're in the bathroom. And so their personalities, the thing. I had a speech class, and we had just the most incredible dramatic moment. But you got to remember, I obviously went to college in the 1970s. So we had a lot of Vietnam veterans, and I happened to be in a class with 2 Vietnam veterans. And one of the guys had been in the CBs. He built bridges, and he did a speech about being over in Vietnam and how it was the greatest year of his life. Now, he was only in his 20s, but he just talked about how wonderful the Vietnamese people are. And then he actually made jokes about, he and his buddies would go put these bridges up, and then the Viet Cong would blow them up in the middle of the night, and then they'd have to go back and rebuild them. And, he made it, but, didn't talk about anybody dying or any of that stuff. It was just how wonderful the people were, how he enjoyed his job, the great human beings that he met, the sense of purpose that he had. It was a real positive speech. as by coincidence, I don't remember how they picked the people, but the second Vietnam veteran was supposed to go up, and he just said, Professor, I'm just not going to give my speech today. I'll talk to you about it after class, but I don't think it's appropriate. And so the professor said, that's fine. And they did. And then about a week later, he gave his speech. And it was the exact opposite. Oh. He had been in a combat unit. He had to defend, it wasn't Khe Sanh, but it was a similar situation where they had to defend the post, and he lost a lot of his friends, and it was kind of the horror of war and how he, changed his mind about a lot of different things. And it was just, the contrasting speeches of two guys, two completely different experiences in Vietnam. And he just didn't feel it was appropriate following that one speech for him to come up and, talk about, the horrors of war. And he had become a Vietnam War protester as a result of his own personal experience. And
pretty thoughtful of him to realize it's the wrong time.
Yeah, no, he was a real bright guy. Both those guys were real bright guys. I mean, there were a lot of bright guys that ended up in Vietnam, and but I'll never forget that. And I'll bet everyone in that class, remembers that because they were two nice guys. I mean, there's like 25 people in that class, but when you're giving speeches all the time, you get to know everybody, and because they're generally talking about things in their life, so you got a pretty good handle.
Yeah, very cool. I haven't seen that. I had a chance recently to see your recognition at the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Oh, I appreciate that, Brian. It was a great day for me and my family. I think I've said this before, but that's I think it becomes as big for the family as it does for the. They really enjoyed that. I mean, we have these great photos where, I'm with Mike McDonald. Like Mike and I are actually, by coincidence, really from the same area in Michigan. There's the Wayne Westland School District. Mike grew up in Westland. My uncle was actually the mayor of Westland, and I grew up in Wayne. So we went at the same time. So, we took this photo, and actually the local newspaper in Wayne wrote about it. It was actually silly because they wrote more about me than they wrote about him because I was more accessible. Right. It's really the only reason. But we have this photo of both.
I never thought about it. Imagine your family, and I'm not trying to get rid of you already, but maybe 20 years down the road or 30 years down the road, and you're not around anymore. And your family talks about you, right? I mean, being in the Hockey Hall of Fame like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a great moment, and I've been trying to, my plaque is there, and I've been wanting to get, to get my grandkids to Toronto. It's not easily accomplished because now you've got to get, passports and all kinds of things to get in there. But I would love to get a photo of my grandkids, around my plaque, just, for posterity.
They have fun. It's very interactive too, the Hockey Hall of Fame. So
it's one of the better ones. I to be honest with you, I pretty much like all the Hall of Fames. I've really enjoyed going to them. I'm a big baseball fan. I love the Baseball Hall of Fame as well. And football one is not far from me in Michigan. It's in Canton. So I've been to that 2 or 3 times. So I do like that. But I agree with you. I think the Hockey Hall of Fame and also the building itself, the old bank building. Yeah. It just feels historic. Like, whoever had the vision to see that bank building on the corner there for sale, I thought, boy, what a great place to Hall of Fame. Like, because that to me it is. Like the other, those buildings look sterile. Like if you go to baseball or even the football one, but you look at the Hockey Hall of Fame around the corner. I have a great photo of me and my son in front of that building as we're walking up. And it's, I just love that photo, because you got the big building. So
that room where all the plaques are is pretty cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, it's for sure. It was, it was a great moment. We had a dinner beforehand, and that dinner was, to me, almost as fun. Dave Fisher from US Hockey was there, and I don't know, spontaneously, he decided to be kind of like the master of ceremonies, and he drew stories out of people. It was kind of like a Kevin Allen roast, So it was,
And
you know, it was a
didn't
lot
your
of fun.
work put together a video of like myself and other people's? Was that?
They did, yeah, yeah.
I was really honored that they asked me to do that. That was
Yeah,
cool.
no, that's great. And then my wife put together we actually had a book signing. I had done the book on Darren McCarty, and I usually, when I do books, I invite all my friends and relatives, and I buy a bunch of books, and I bring in whoever I wrote the book with. And then, I give away some books and stuff. And my wife didn't tell me, but she made that also kind of a celebration of me getting Hall of Fame. And we had, a video, and I know a documentarian, and she got him to kind of do a documentary on my life, but he did it satirically. So he ended up, and one of his themes is that I had been involved in hockey for 200 years, and he superimposed my face on a bunch of photos from turn of the century hockey. Yeah, I mean, it turned out to be good, but anyway, I want to move on. A couple other things, notes for those who are kind of following what's going on. Phil Kessel. I saw a note where people were suggesting he couldn't end up with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh.
So I don't know whether that will happen.
Not a lot of cap space there, right?
Not a lot of cap space, but he doesn't cost a lot of money. Yeah. But speaking of Larry Brooks also wrote a little note where he said he's been told that Cadre is still looking for $9 million. Now, I don't know how he's going to get $9 million. I really don't. There's just not any money out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not arguing that he shouldn't get it. I mean, he had an incredible season, but he is a little bit older than you like to see.
And I look at the whole body of work of his career. I don't think he's a $9 million player. I mean, he had that 1 year last year. He was a $9 million player, but I don't think.
I know what you're saying. I mean, like if you said off the top of my head, I'd say 8. So
yeah. Yeah, I'd even go a little lower than that. I'd even go like, if you look at his whole career, I just think he's more, which is nothing wrong with that. $7 million player is still a heck of a hockey player, but he's a really good second line centerman. Do you pay a second line centerman $9 million a year? That's what you pay a first line centerman, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, how many players do you think there are in the NHL this next season making $10 million or more? Because I know the answer to that.
Yeah, you do. 10?
14.
Is it 14? Oh.
Yeah. 14 players now have 10 million. And believe it or not, Patrick Kane and Taves are not among them. Their AAVs were 10 plus, but in their final years, they're not making $10 million.
Oh. Well,
so,
that'll be interesting.
But you got guys up there like I wonder too, we're going to have to go, but maybe we'll talk about this more. Is Austin Matthews, who comes up 2 years, now I don't think it's next summer. I think it's
a 5-year deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Summer after that, will he be the first 20% player? And by that, you can spend up to 20% of your cap on one player.
Right.
Nobody's done that.
Yeah. Connor McDavid could have done that, but he voluntarily backed away from that a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I wonder if Connor McDavid is going to back away.
Unrestricted free. He was smart. He was smart. He signed a 5-year deal, so he's getting another kick at the can earlier than everybody else.
So, yeah, Austin Matthews. And, like today, obviously, that would be $16 million, or a little over $16 million.
Right.
So,
unrestricted free agent. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if the general manager in Detroit would give him that.
Ooh, imagine that.
So
leaving the Leafs to go to Detroit, rivals.
Yeah. It's just me spitballing.
You think it through? That's
Yeah, but I think that there's a possibility of that.
So there's another case of, does Toronto just let him walk and get nothing for him, but they trade him before that, right?
Yeah, no, that's the craziness of the world now. Imagine
if Austin Matthews is available to be traded, what you could get for him when he's still in the prime of his career like that.
Yeah,
I guess it depends how long is left on the contract too, but.
Yeah, I mean that would be like a Herschel Walker trade. It would have one player for 6, or Eric Lindros. Like I can imagine. Remember all the guys in that trade: Hextall, Duchesne, Harry Huffman.
Yeah.
first round picks, $15 million. I mean, $10 million, whatever it was. Yeah.
Imagine the pressure on the players like Barry Beck. 5 guys for Barry Beck. A year before they'd gone to the finals. Then they traded away 5 of those guys that were on the team in the finals for Barry Beck. A lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure on Barry Beck when he got here.
Yeah. Anyway, we appreciate you for tuning in and listening to us prattle on, and we'll be back on Wednesday. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. The idea of it, is one person really worth 20% of your salary cap? We say this is a team sport. This is not the NBA where 2 or 3 players can really lift you.
That's a good conversation. I like that.
Yeah, so we can certainly talk about that on Wednesday. But if you want to read me, I'm at hockeybuzz.com and also DetroitHockeyNow.com.
Or you can go to the Hall of Fame in Toronto and look at Kevin Allen's plaque there. And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great day. We will see you on Wednesday.